Congress is considering a fourth stimulus bill, and it's important to consider how this type of legislation is decided, how it's written, what type of provisions it includes, especially when it comes to an industry that is looking for a bailout, and that's the oil industry. Now, keep in mind that the fossil fuel companies did not receive the bailouts that massive corporations did and small businesses did in the previous stimulus bills, but lobbyists from these corporations, these oil companies, are now working with Morgan Stanley in order to figure out just how to appeal to Democratic congressional lawmakers in order to make sure that there are provisions that give them some money. So TYT Investigates, with your help, by the way, was able to break a story. And by the way, they also have the audio and the internal memo that Morgan Stanley wrote in regard to a meeting that they had with oil industry lobbyists. So let me give you those details, and then we'll listen to some of the audio from this phone call. So the report describes and links to audio of an April 22nd conference call between Morgan Stanley and Akin Gump, one of the top lobbying firms in Washington. Akin Gump's team consisted of a lawyer and 4 lobbyists, 2 of them former members of Congress, there's that revolving door again, and the other 2 former Republican staffers. So Akin Gump works as the lobbying firm for ExxonMobil and for Chevron, to give you a sense of who they're working with. Morgan Stanley's internal report summarized a number of paths for potential financial support for the fossil fuel industry, referring to, quote, a likelihood that Congress would authorize a bailout in the form of purchasing oil for the government's strategic petroleum reserve. Now, if you guys can remember, a few weeks ago, we shared a story with you where Donald Trump was looking to help the fossil fuel industry by getting the government to purchase a bunch of oil and store it in the strategic petroleum reserves. Democrats actually fought him on that, and they won. But they're looking to get some help from members of Congress so they can actually accomplish this. So the report describes the unfavorable situation for oil and gas companies and says that no money is expected from the next stimulus package. But the lobbyists see some possible tactics. An oil bailout, it says, could be coupled with renewables tax credit extensions, while regulatory support could be in the form of the strategic petroleum reserves purchases, relaxation in regulations, and diplomatic support from negotiations with other oil-producing countries. So I want to now go to some of the audio because one of the former lawmakers involved in this call was former Representative Lamar Smith, who's a Republican, and he starts strategizing in the clips that you're about to hear. Take a listen.
Hopeful, as you just mentioned, in the 4.0, the next big stimulus package, which is expected to be as large as the CARES Act, that there will be some provisions in there that will be helpful to the energy industry. One, there may be some more money for storage. I think specifically there's going to be a big effort made to get loans to at least mid-sized energy companies that are not necessarily qualifying for loans right now to try to help keep them afloat, so you'll have additional funds for that. I think if the national security argument catches hold, as it should, that will justify and maybe persuade some hesitant members of Congress that the energy industry is in a different category and definitely needs to be helped for the sake of the economy, which also means for the sake of jobs as well.
Okay, Cenk, so 2 notable things that I want to talk to you about from that clip. So first of all, he mentioned, the upcoming stimulus bill is expected to be as large as the CARES Act, which we all know was a multi-trillion-dollar handout, bailout to massive corporations. So I don't know how accurate his assessment is. I don't know if it's actually going to be as massive as the CARES Act was, but that's something to be concerned about because we know that the vast majority of funds did go to these corporations in the form of bailouts.
Yeah, I don't know if he's referring to the PPP, which was for small businesses, and the first version of that was $359 billion, which compared to the giant amount they gave to the biggest banks and businesses in the country was a relatively small amount. So I'm not sure if he's referring to that or not. But this is business as usual in Washington. Giant corporations hire connected former Congress people, including Democrats. The other guy on the call was Joe Donnelly, former senator from Indiana. He lost his race, ran as a Republican light, and immediately became a lobbyist, and now is helping oil companies and gets rich off of it. So when we say that corporate Democrats aren't the same as progressives, a lot of the people in the media say, how dare you? You guys are ruffians, barbarians. Joe Donnelly is such a wonderful progressive Democrat. Yeah, now working for Chevron and ExxonMobil and trying to figure out how to take your taxpayer money and put it in their pocket.
Exactly. And what the second thing that stood out to me was the argument that the oil companies are planning to use in order to get the money that they want. And they're going to push this idea that, hey, you know what? It's all about national security. We want to keep the country safe by giving a bailout to the oil companies. One thing that they also want to try doing, by the way, is using tariffs on foreign oil in an effort to basically force Americans to purchase oil produced here in the United States.
So TY Chang has been doing amazing reporting on this at TYT Investigates. This is why he has so many reporting honors and awards throughout his career. I can't thank the Young Turks audience enough for hiring him, and we did it through you guys. And he was charged with following the money in the case of environmental issues. And this is exactly what happens. So they, in that same conversation, they also talked about, hey, we might have to, give some to the renewable energy companies in order to get the Democrats to play along so that we could funnel the money to the big oil guys. And TY has also written in the past about Harold Hamm, a giant Republican donor, the one that you're referring to there, and with his plan to do tariffs on oil coming inside the country. He has the oil produced inside the country so that, that would give him an unfair advantage. And he's thinking Trump's doing tariffs anyway. But as TY reported, that one's a little bit more complicated because there's also donors, the big multinational oil companies don't want that because they trade oil all across the world. Whereas Harold Hamm is getting oil from here. So the donors are battling each other as well to see who's going to get the handouts from the American taxpayers. And since they have all these former congressmen and senators and staffers in their back pocket, they're like, go talk to your buddies. And don't worry, at the end of the day, Democrats will play along. But to be fair, and credit where credit is due, so far they haven't. And so far they've not allowed for subsidies to oil companies. And I love that. So if they keep fighting like that, I'm super happy to give them credit.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And understand that the trade-off that they are proposing in order to lure Democrats into agreeing to these provisions is, hey, we'll extend tax cuts for renewable energy companies. But that doesn't do enough in pushing the country in the direction it needs to go in, which is completely eliminating carbon emissions and focusing solely on renewable energies. This is an industry that's dying. They know they're dying, and they're trying to milk the U.S. taxpayer as much as they can on their way out. And it's disgusting. So I do commend Democratic lawmakers for not biting on this so far. But we're going to keep our eyes on it and see how this story develops. In
fact, we've got more exclusives coming out for you guys, like that tape that they uncovered. So check TYT.com every day. More breaking news on this as we go.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.